hello everyone. Welcome to this week's live stream. This is our last live stream. We've titled it kind of the wrap-up live stream. To get started, I just wanted to remind Jeff that in our first video we talked about his favorite thing to grow, and I think he said it was spelt. So I wanted to ask you, what has been your favorite thing or realization that you may have come to through participating in these videos?
Wow, okay. I'm feeling like there's a great opportunity for dialogue and exchange between all walks of life relative to food, agriculture, gardening, our relationship to animals, both meat eaters and vegans. And, it's this format creates a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about it, especially in the COVID world. What's possible. It may be the only option we have for a while. I hate to actually go there and think that.
Right.
But it's better than just sort of being locked in.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Coming into this, I felt excited to work with people hands-on, but I've definitely grown in my abilities to, educate people virtually. I feel like, and it's definitely a skill that I feel like is going to be ever more present in a changing world. We don't know what the future looks like, and it's definitely opens up our audience to a lot of other people.
It does, and it creates an opportunity for the audience to react to what we're doing back to us and say, well, could you provide more of this or less of that? And less talk and more walk, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you are someone that's been tuning in every week, please do not hesitate to ask questions on our live chat this week, or even just make comments. Say things that you liked about our lessons, things that you didn't like, things that you'd like to see changed, if this is something that you want to see continued, things like that. We're eager to hear from you hopefully today, or even just comment or connect with our Facebook and Instagrams and let us know how you're thinking about it there if you're not able to tune in right now. So, Jeff, I wanted to see if you had any questions for me before we kind of got into our breakdown.
Oh, wow. So would you want to spend another summer doing this?
I could see myself doing it. Yeah, I definitely really like the diversity that comes with this job. Being able to kind of make a plan, execute it, do different things though, and things like that. So.
Yeah, well, I hope you do, because I want to keep you involved with Stratford, and hopefully we can actually begin teaching face-to-face with people here again soon.
Yeah.
So I would love to have you involved in that.
Absolutely, yeah. We definitely have a lot of ideas for getting people involved, both in new ways virtually and in person, kind of seeing the different opportunities that are safe there. Right. So, yeah. So we're going to go ahead. There's no reason for us to jump into the schedule. This is our last live stream. But I do want to remind you to like this video, subscribe, share it on Facebook, share it on your Instagram story, whatever you want to do, just to get this message out. If you're someone that is passionate about, regenerative agriculture, or have come to become passionate about it through these live streams, let your friends know. I think this is a topic that a lot of people can become involved in, from a small scale to a large scale. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. We're going to go ahead and just start breaking down each week that we went through and just talk about it a little bit more. If you all have any questions that maybe we weren't able to answer, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and start our discussion.
There we go. So I like the idea that we're back to regenerative agriculture versus sustainable agriculture. I like both terms. I think they say a lot, but it's I like the fact that you brought that phrase back, and it's, like I said, it's a great Rodale sort of expression that started all this, and so that was a tough session we did there in the library.
Yeah, yeah.
We tried to do a live stream from our own broadband, and wasn't very successful at that. So kudos to Kent Larson in allowing us to use his super broadband.
Yes,
to get this done.
It's definitely been helpful.
But yeah, it's regenerative agriculture generally brings in a lot of ideas, right? And it's the one thing that I sort of miss with regenerative versus sustainable, and maybe it's people define regenerative differently is the social community aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That when you were reintroduced to regenerative, how did they talk about the social connection?
So I feel like kind of looking at regenerative agriculture, it was changing our understanding of sustainable agriculture. So a lot of times I feel like my understanding of like an organic system is sustainable, or even just conventional farmers becoming sustainable, things like that. But instead asking ourselves, what are we trying to sustain? So incorporating the sustainability model, but changing what we are actually trying to sustain. And I think that's kind of my understanding of what regenerative agriculture is, changing kind of that sustainability piece.
Mm-hmm. So do you see it as a way to regenerate community too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think regenerative agriculture better incorporates all people. And, we see in conventional agriculture a consolidation of, like the workforce, essentially, especially if you look at the actual farming that takes place. We see, 1.5, 2% of the actual agriculture industry is farmers nowadays. When you look at a conventional system and switching back to regenerative agriculture or towards regenerative agriculture, we see more incorporation of jobs, people, communities all coming together and becoming involved in their food, but also having other opportunities that are available then that way too.
Yeah, I like also the way regenerative agriculture speaks to renewable resources,
mm-hmm.
Both for soil and nature and energy
mm-hmm.
and water.
Right.
And, so it's a very positive swing. One thing that I tried to really push in my presentation with you
mm-hmm.
For that session was the idea of mimicking nature.
Yeah.
And I would, I need to give credit to Wes Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of highlighted that in my mind when I first read it years ago. And also to Wendell Berry, because he speaks to that a lot. And David Klein, he's always talking about his relationship with nature. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very strong point.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I feel like a lot of times agriculture and the environment are viewed as like separate entities when they are very much the same, in many ways. And I think, mimicking nature is the future of agriculture. Otherwise, it's going to be a dying society if we don't start mimicking nature a little bit better.
And a dying environment.
Right.
Ecosystem.
Exactly.
So, we got to cement that relationship.
For sure.
So yeah, we cut our teeth on that one.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? Diversity all around. So it was a great start.
Yeah, I agree.
Good place to start.
So the next topic is beekeeping. We talked about this a couple different times in our live stream series. Beekeeping is something that was special to me. I've been a beekeeper 6-7 years at this point. I took about a year off when I was in school, and my parents actually have moved, so I had to lose my beehives. But during that live stream, Kristen, our head beekeeper, and I were able to talk about how to get started in beekeeping. It can seem really overwhelming. I think that's probably like the first place to start. You look at all of the equipment that you need, the expenses that come along with it, the knowledge that you have to know to feel comfortable taking care of these bees because you're investing your time and your money into them. So you want to know that you're doing the right thing. You start with learning the equipment. What do you need to get started? First of all, we talk about the different boxes, the frames, the variety that exists in just the equipment that you need, what actually works the best based on like our experiences, and things like that. So taking the time to listen to other beekeepers. There is all sorts of information out there, but if you can find someone that can, mentor you, or even just, listen to someone on the internet, whatever works for you, find what works for you, and then, invest if you're ready to. Setting your goals. I know some beekeepers aren't really sure where to get started, so set a small goal. Set short-term goals, set long-term goals, depending on what you want to see out of it. Is this something that you want to see turn into a business, or is this something that you just want to have as a hobby? And I think that applies to a lot of the different topics that we look at throughout this series. But I kind of went into beekeeping not sure what my goals were. I had about 3 or 4 hives when I got started. By the end of my high school career, when I was really into beekeeping, I had about 14 hives. So I was definitely starting to turn a profit and being successful in that way, with acquiring the equipment and everything that I needed in that way, learning how to catch swarms and kind of maintain my hive without having to buy new bees every year. Like I mentioned earlier, get connected with other beekeepers to learn. I know one of my greatest, not advantages, but kind of like things that helped me get started was attending the Scioto Valley Beekeepers Association. And there's a lot of different beekeepers associations around the state of Ohio that you can, join and become a part of, listen to. A lot of times, they'll just talk about things that they've experienced. Beekeepers will talk, and that's just a great way to get connected there. You can connect with their Facebook groups and see what kind of things are going on. I know people are always selling equipment, and you could, buy equipment there if you needed to. And coming back to that expensive piece, don't let it overwhelm you. I know I was really lucky. I had a lot of people give me equipment. They were like, I'm, getting too old to beekeep. Do you want these bee boxes? And I was like, yeah, sure. Then it takes a little bit of time for you to, keep them, but it works, and it's a little bit cheaper that way. It, may not last as long, but it's, get you going where you need to go.
Yeah, beekeeping is probably, I consider them like livestock.
Yeah.
They're critters that we're trying to nurture and cultivate and create a good life for,
right.
So I was always amazed how much work it takes to maintain bees.
Yeah.
My PhD is in entomology, study of bugs.
Right.
So people assume that I know a lot about bees. Well, I know enough to know that I don't want to raise bees because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I spend more time, or I've seen you spend more time than I do with any of my livestock to help maintain bees.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a weekly, if not a daily thing.
Yeah, especially in the summer, it's kind of like you need to check on them, do something else for them. This is a lot of different things.
Then you have to worry all winter, whether they're going to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we've got the human condition sort of pounding them from all directions.
Right.
So it's a very, very challenging thing.
For sure.
I don't envy.
Absolutely. I know it's kind of hard to talk about beekeeping without talking about colony collapse disorder. And in high school, I did research on the bees along with like raising the bees. And one of the big pieces of colony collapse disorder is it's hard to kind of pinpoint what the actual cause is, just because there's so many different factors that are negatively affecting bees right now.
Yeah.
So it's all of those different factors that causes these issues that we see in beehives. And so we're going to talk further. Later we talked about pollinators that are native and how we can foster a healthy environment for them. And that kind of applies to even just beekeeping.
It goes hand in hand.
Right.
If you keep the pollinators happy, chances are you can keep
the bees happy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, near and dear. I originally got into this field thinking I would never raise an animal.
Wow.
I was one who liked to be free and footloose,
Yeah.
And every job I had as a horticulturist or a farmer included livestock. So over the years, I actually have come to love it. It's part of my daily rhythm. So it's something that I'm probably too close to the forest to see the trees sometimes, but it's a great lifestyle for me. So it definitely has to involve some serious thinking around lifestyle. Definitely has to involve some thinking about capital investment, the time you have, whether you're going to work a second job, the markets you have available.
Right.
So it's not a decision you can take lightly. But one thing, an integrated livestock management, I don't think I pressed enough, was the idea of it being grass-based at Stratford, and how important that is. I've seen so many dairy farmers struggle over the years trying to make it by growing their corn and their beans and blending their own feeds there at the farm, and seeing the costs and infrastructure that's required to grow those crops successfully, harvest them, and store them, and then process them to feed them, and to test the feed to see it's adequate for a dairy farm in particular. So the grass-based option, which has been around forever, but for some reason we fell away from, it's definitely a process that I've seen farmers who ran into red typically in the 70s and 80s, 90s, and even now, trying to feed animals quickly and efficiently. I'll give it that. There's economy of scale there. But they're losing money in the process. it's one of those areas where farmers continue to get squeezed,
right.
Trying to maintain the input costs and make a living.
Mm-hmm.
So grass-based, which goes to some future slides we have here, is it's one of those perennial systems that I continually look for as a model in terms of what regenerative and sustainable agriculture needs to constantly look at. Again, mimicking nature. Perennialism is obviously a very big part of what sustains us,
right.
And so we need to sustain it. The closing of the loops. I mean, it always made me wonder. We got a lot of engineering efforts into to basically manage waste.
Yeah. Livestock
waste. Yeah. Large lagoons and slatted pits sitting underneath the livestock. Barn areas,
right.
and so what do you do with that? So the simple solution is composting, but that's very cost and time and labor intensive.
Right.
So again, grass-based agriculture pushes the idea of moving those nutrients out of the barn. Don't process them, let Mother Nature process them.
Right.
And not bring it into the barn. And by not bringing that into the barn, you're not bringing in potential disease, flies, of course, the smell.
Yeah, yeah.
And all the other things, and you're getting those nutrients out there in Mother Nature. Have at it firsthand,
right.
as Mother Nature intended. And so the other thing that I sort of highlighted in that is the idea that Stratford's unique in a model I think could be mimicked elsewhere. Is the idea of having crop rotations and intensive rotational grazing systems on top of each other.
Right.
Typically, we tend to segregate those systems out because there are different sort of management styles with them.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities just to create a greater integration between crops and livestock. At the very least, you have an opportunity to take a failed crop, which happens a lot in organic and regenerative agriculture,
right.
and graze it.
That's true.
Get down speed immediately. So, anyways, and it just the other benefits that come from the rotations and integrated livestock management system is you get biodiversity benefits, soil health benefits, definitely reduced tillage.
Yeah.
The feed costs through the floor, they're just dropping nothing almost.
Yeah.
It's really your only time. Your only cost is your time.
Yeah.
And, so it becomes management intensive, a little bit information intensive, but it's it all in the end adds to the bottom line.
Right.
So as you can tell, I'm a big advocate of grass-based agriculture. So it's good session. I mean, did you learn anything from all this? I mean, you were an intern last year.
Right.
I mean, what was your take home?
Yeah. So like I've said before in past live streams, I grew up raising goats. We always fed our goats, different kinds of feeds, things like that. And we had a few different rotational pastures that we had, but they were pretty large, so it wasn't very well managed, I guess. And we definitely struggled with the cost aspect of feeding them. And so coming to learn, I remember being maybe a freshman in college and hearing there was a TED Talk about elephants in Africa. I don't know, you probably know this TED Talk. A lot of people know this TED Talk, I feel like. And there was a scientist that had gone in and killed a lot of the elephants in an attempt to, restore this, grassland. And he realized that the elephants actually nurtured it. And so the same thing applies when we have a properly managed grass-based system, is that the animals are nursing the grass, these perennial systems that we want to nurture and foster, which then helps the soil, which then sequesters carbon, and all of these good things. And so, last summer I kind of was able to reconnect with this idea that livestock aren't just bad. So it's so common to see livestock demonized in terms of the environment, that there's no way that we can have a system where livestock and people work together that is not negative for the environment. But I think a grass-based system definitely provides a model for it to be successful, and not just be successful, but be beneficial. So that's kind of my main takeaway. It definitely is labor intensive. I feel like a lot of my supper was mowing grass,
Right.
But there's nothing
Mucking,
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I think if you care about the system, then it's necessary, then it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah. Well, again, it's mimicking nature.
Right. Exactly.
And it's and you know what? Domestic animals aren't the only animals on this planet.
Yeah.
So if cows are a problem, then why aren't kangaroos?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or buffalo. Things like that.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a matter of balance, the relationships, understanding the human impact on their environment, their ecosystem.
Right.
And it's just because we like to eat.
Yeah.
Well, so do they.
Yeah.
So, well, good. I'm glad you came out.
Yeah.
Positive side of that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you included it as a topic for this year.
Yeah, for sure. I know. I'm probably definitely annoying to like my vegetarian friends.
Oh,
I'm like, come on, meat can be good.
Right. Well, us at Stratford, half of our staff are vegetarians.
I know.
So yeah, all opinions are welcome.
Right, I agree. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So greenhouse and garden management. April was the one that actually did this one. I enjoyed, getting to stand there and, have it filmed and things like that. Greenhouses are something that I don't know a ton about. Gardening, I know a little bit more about. I grew up raising, or growing, I guess. Heirloom tomatoes was kind of our specialty. So it was kind of cool to hear a little bit more about it and, develop my knowledge a little bit more. April talked a lot about, again, goals. What are your goals in a garden? Gardening is something that is very scalable. You can have a small scale setup or you can have a large scale setup depending on kind of what you want. I know we had about a 2-acre vegetable production at our farm, which is pretty intense. For just like my dad and then my brother and I. So I felt like, I was like, oh, this is child labor, growing up.
Well, that meant you spent a lot of time putting up tomatoes and processing food to freezer.
Right.
Canning.
And to the farmer's market and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So we did all that. And so definitely consider what you want to grow. I know it can be time investment if you go all in, but you don't have to. If you are someone that wants to find a market, look at the farmer's market. Look at, I know we sold to like the Amish markets, and there were some restaurants in town that we would sometimes sell to. So if you're someone that wants to start growing your business, there are markets out there. So again, consider what you want to grow and what you'll grow. So like I said, we raised heirloom tomatoes, and that was a market that we felt we could meet. Tomatoes are definitely very labor intensive, but people want it. Heirloom tomatoes are the best tasting things ever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember growing up, and I would take like the tomato off my burger in a restaurant because I thought it was so bad. It is.
It's hard to argue flavor.
Yeah. So kind of the next piece is once you've decided what you want to do with your garden or your greenhouse, look at the soil. The soil, again, in every piece of this live stream series, we talk about soil because it is the most important part for the most part, other than goal setting and things like that. And so how can you improve your soil with compost and annual cover cropping? So kind of looking at what you can leave in the garden to continue to foster healthy soils rather than leaving your soils bare over the winter or in seasons where you're not growing crops or vegetables or anything that you're growing. And then looking at compost too, let's say you have a farmer down the road that raises livestock, or maybe you want to have a few livestock just so you can have more robust compost. But you can even just use scraps from your garden in your compost, things like that. And we talk a lot more about biochar later on, which is something that you can add to your compost and kind of beef up your soil. And then kind of another key tool if you're looking at like organic gardening and things like that is companion planting, which looks like a lot of different possibilities there. You can plant things that pests will go to rather than going to your vegetable that you actually want to grow. You can companion plant just so that they both are looking to benefit each other nutrient-wise and things like that. So there's a lot of different possibilities there that are actually successful. I know if you just grow one thing in a monoculture type setup, it is likely not to be successful without external inputs. So that's something that you really need to consider. And then that again cuts down on costs if you're able to have a successful like companion planting setup. And then lastly, we talked about this pretty briefly, was creating a healthy greenhouse environment. So that's probably the most important part, I feel like, in a greenhouse. Is it can be easy to get like molds, things like that, and air circulation is really important. And then also kind of the soil setup there, and it can a lot of times look pretty different than a garden soil setup. I know I've seen a lot of greenhouses kind of feature sandy soils actually, just because it kind of helps keep down the amount of water in there, so then reducing mold and things like that. Do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I would never live somewhere without a greenhouse.
Yeah.
I'm hooked forever.
Yeah.
The idea that you can actually harvest year round in an unheated greenhouse.
Right.
Just a matter of changing what you grow throughout the season. So yeah, it's again soil.
Yeah.
It's the same in the greenhouses and the fields. Companion planting. It's again mimicking nature.
Right.
And do you ever do the basil tomato combo?
Yes.
It works.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, and there's so many different things you can actually accomplish through weed management, pest management, actually to enhance circulation or enhance the solar gain by how you arrange tall versus short plants, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It sort of speaks to the future in my mind. As we become more and more uncertain species because of the worldwide sort of pandemics and climate change, type things happening. More and more people are coming to Stratford and saying, "How do I start growing my own food?"
Right.
Because I don't want to wake up someday and the produce is gone.
Right.
Giant eagle's gone. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
So it actually speaks to us as a species in terms of how we should become more responsible to feeding ourselves. What are the things we need to learn to do to move forward through these uncertain times?
Yeah, for sure. I know we talked about this a little bit, but at the beginning of kind of the shutdowns, I know that it was impossible to buy any seeds for anything. You just couldn't find anything you wanted to grow. And I know even once things started to open back up, and I'd go to Lowe's and look at seeds, there would just be nothing there, unless it was like flowers and things like that. But definitely, looking at growing your own food, like I said, scalability. Growing your own food is scalable. You don't have to, buy it from the grocery store. So that's definitely something really important to consider. And greenhouses are, again, scalable too. You can have tiny little hoop houses. You can have a standing structure. I know we had one to start seeds. So whatever works for you.
Yeah, cold frames, hot frames.
Right.
You can actually use compost heat to keep a cold frame hot. That's a hot frame.
Yeah.
And there are people who grow things in these little structures.
Yeah. So another awesome topic. I really enjoyed talking about this one. I feel like a lot of people were interested in hearing about this, just because it's something that everybody can kind of relate to. So machinery and equipment. You can talk about this one a little bit better than I can.
Well, I tell you what, it's a big topic, and it's one that requires a lot of talk because you are obviously talking about a lot of capital to set up. So, and I'm always an advocate of starting small and really feeling the pinch or the need to invest in a piece of equipment. You really got to want to make hay to get into hay equipment. You really got to want to plant, 10 acres of sweet corn before you want to get a tractor of that scale and the planting equipment to do that. So, so start off with a small sweet corn plot. Get a sense of really what that takes, because for instance, the harvest window in sweet corn is small. So not only you got to get it in the ground, you probably got to think about successional planting and do a variety of varieties. So it's coming off, and then everybody has different tastes. But get a sense of what that's like to really manage a product that needs to be harvested quick. It's highly perishable. If it's not eaten within a week, it's hard food.
Right.
And what's that like? And then once you get that sense of that scale, then you start feeling like, yeah, I can do this. I can get comfortable, and then go from there. And the thing that I think was the problem with our current agricultural system is we either have very small or we have very large. And there's a whole another realm that exists that this country hasn't really embraced, and but Europe has, and that's sort of the medium, the middle scale, and Asia has too.
Yeah.
You look at their rice harvesters; they're stand-up, walk-behind type machines that go in and they'll fill up a little combine type harvester, high-tech stuff, very expensive too.
Yeah.
But they're filling that up with, I don't know, 40 bushel at best, offloading and go out and do it again.
Yeah.
And they feed how many billions of people to do that. So so there's a whole intermediate, what I like to call appropriate technology, because it actually lessens the carbon footprint, lessens the capital investment level, lessens the technology that you have to manage and maintain, your ability to move around, its portability. Some of the combines we see around Stratford, we couldn't get down our lane if we had to.
Yeah.
30, 40 feet wide.
Right, yeah, 36 row, planters, things like that.
Yeah. So take it slow. Gotta really want it, and then once you really want it, you gotta be in love with that.
Yeah.
or know a good place to get an annual lease. A lot of the big growers, they're getting a new combine every year because they're just leasing it.
Yeah.
Turning it over every year.
Yeah.
So yeah, against all that, we have to live within our means financially. Big issue in today's America's agriculture. I don't think it's so much so in Europe, certainly not so in Asia. It's availability of labor. There's just fewer and fewer people as you go forward who don't want to do manual hard labor.
Right.
So square bales, that's one of the reasons we went to round bales. Is it literally can become a one-man operation.
Yeah.
You cut it, you rake it, put it in these big bales, and you get your tractor with these forks, and you move the round bales around, or you leave it in the field. And, so it's that's certainly a consideration. And and again, goals. It's that whole farm planning thing. You've got to keep your goals in mind. And think about what it is in terms of lifestyle and how you want to live. The soils needs for different enterprises, year-round income. Again, with mimicking nature, redundancy, resilience. There's just so many things to consider.
Right.
Heavy equipment, compact soil.
Yeah, for sure.
The lighter equipment may not be able to work a heavy soil.
Yeah.
So you have to create the context. That's probably the next word I say after soil.
Yeah.
Context.
Yeah.
And then I am not afraid of a nicely built small tool. I love it when I find one that's ergonomically correct, doesn't break your back, and gets the job done.
Yeah.
Whether it's weeding, harvesting, mowing, trimming, you name it, turning soil.
Right.
A well-made hand tool is a wonderful thing, and a great place to start as you think about what kind of larger tools and equipment you want to get into.
Right.
So it's a topic you could go on forever with, and there's so many permutations. It's don't get me going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know machinery and equipment was another topic that I've had people at the farm stop me and say, I love that. Like, I didn't even know that we had, what all of those things did that we have sitting in the, machinery and equipment lane. So.
Yeah, the guys, our volunteers that come there weekly, they walk by all this stuff and they didn't know until we did this.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I did that.
Right. Something else I wanted to add about machinery is something that we did a lot on our farm was we would rent equipment. And so it can be a little costly depending on how it's rented, if it's by hour, by day, whatever, what it is. But, if you don't want to go out and buy something that's pretty expensive, you can rent it, especially if you only need it once a year. So it just kind of depends, like, what you're doing, why you need it, how expensive it is, and just kind of consider what you need. There's a lot of places that will rent equipment, and it ends up being pretty, beneficial that way.
Yeah, it's a great concept, and it's very true. And when you look at what it costs to keep the tractor running and all the tools that it powers and runs, it's not so much owning it as keeping it going.
Right.
And you can hire a lot of this kind of work custom also. People will come in with an operator and rototill a couple acres for you, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
You just got to be ready to plant 2 acres.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So our next one is pollinator products. I mentioned earlier, there's pollinators, things like that we talked about, but then also the products that come along with raising honeybees. You can't raise honeybees and not get honey. It's kind of,
sort of worth it.
Yeah, I know Kristen, she doesn't like extracting honey. She kind of, thinks it's kind of annoying. And it is pretty labor intensive. You have to pull honey off, extract it, put frames back on so that they have space to put more honey. It's something that you can't just leave there indefinitely, because you'll have like a 10 stack high frame. It's insane. It definitely is important to make sure you have honey in your hives over the winter, though. But that's kind of a different topic. But beyond honey, honey isn't the only product that you can harvest from having honeybees. So I know, like, at my farmer's market in Chillicothe, we probably had 2 or 3 different beekeepers that would sell their honey there, and so it's kind of an oversaturated market, and it was kind of hard to be successful in that market there. But there were other avenues that we could sell our honey, or even wax is kind of the next step. I think is kind of easy to extract there. My mom got into making soap, and so she really enjoyed having my brother do all the wax extracting. And then she would make, soap, lip balm, things like that out of the wax, or you can even sell just the wax. People are always looking for that. Maybe there's other soap makers or people that want to use that for beauty products, things like that. I know we even talked about you can collect the pollen. It's a nice market now. People are always talking about the health benefits of pollen, because there's obviously health benefits for the bees for the pollen, so it kind of translates to people a little bit. The propolis, I was at Whole Foods like a week after I had done this live stream and saw propolis actually for sale there. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And even royal jelly I've seen on the market at Whole Foods, which I was like, wow, I didn't even know actually that people sold that. So there is a lot that you can do with honeybees beyond honey, especially if you are somewhere that there already is a market for honey, but you can kind of see what else you can get out of it, which is really important. But you have to consider the labor equity that I have down there. It is a lot of work, in my opinion, to process wax. Even just the honey, it's a lot of time to process the honey. Then you have to do the wax, and then you have to do all these other things. Some of them are a little bit easier to get out, like the pollen. That's pretty easy, I think, to process, but it takes a long time, and it kind of is a little bit annoying because you only get a little bit at a time. But like it says, most of the products that you would get from a beehive are shelf stable, so it's year-round income. So maybe you're pretty smart about setting out what you sell for your honey. Do it in small batches. That way you kind of have something to boost your income throughout the year. I know that I mainly used the honey as like a way to boost my income. As like a high schooler. So yeah, for sure. Is there anything like you want to add to this?
Well, I mean, it's just a wonderful market that creates a lot of opportunities. Dave Noble, he's used honey to help brewers sort of flavor their beers,
yeah.
And it's bakers, so you can create those direct connections to people who are adding value to food, in other ways, a Greek bakery, and
a lot of baklava.
Right. So there's just so much.
Yeah.
About creativity, imagination,
right?
And I guess energy.
Yeah, that too. So yeah. So the next topic is whole farm planning. I know I really enjoyed kind of hearing about this. There's a lot more going into it than I was kind of anticipating. That you had to say. What do you have to say about it now, kind of as a recap?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny how many people, and it's just not farming or gardening or whatever, how many people actually move through life without really setting their intentions, not setting their goals. That to me alone is, listening to a discussion on this alone sort of reminds us that so many of us move through life without doing that. So taking pause, stepping back, taking a bigger view, a realistic view, being truthful with yourself and others that you're in partnership with, about what it is you really want to accomplish. But also, you can't move forward without context.
Right.
Context. what's your soil types? What's the history of the land use on this piece of property? What's, where the market's been and where they're going. It's the assessment of the resources and making those choices as you sort of decide which resources you're going to integrate with, ignore, highlight, is a very important part of the process. And then, of course, implementing the plan is what we all tend to just drop into without even thinking about it.
Right.
We're a society of doers, but the thinking part seems to get shrunk. And or thinking about it, considering options, getting quotes, whatever. It's the implementing can actually be a very challenging, difficult part because that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the resources you have or don't have to work with.
Right.
You may think you can charge forward and do this and find out that you can't because you don't really have enough capital to do it. So what do you do then?
Right.
And then the monitoring and revisiting. Again, being honest about what's happened. Is that true to what your intentions were, what your goals were? Do I have a good plan? And most importantly, it's like you can't have success without a series of failures. So you always have to constantly visit. It's a dynamic model. It never ends. For me at Stratford, I wake up every morning with a list of 6 things I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to get 1 done.
Right.
But every morning I do the same thing. I literally sit and think, this. And I go for it.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, I say, okay, I could probably do this if I did this differently. And came over here and got this person to help me do this.
Right.
So a dynamic process, context, never ending. And you got to live with it. You got to do it. What's the sense of moving forward and anything else you have to put?
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So did it change your life, Annie?
I don't know. I have to think about that. That's funny. I know that when we did this session, I talked about SMART goals, and I'm a big fan of SMART goals, which is like a really long saying for like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And so I know like in high school I would write long-term goals and then like put it on my wall so I'd have to look at it every day.
Right.
Because like there's a saying that if you write it down, it's like 80% more likely to happen. So I feel like as I've gotten into college, I've gotten worse at setting long-term goals. But I'm definitely a very short-term goal-oriented person, at least right now, and can assess, do those goals, implement them, and then like reassess, what happened here. But I definitely need to work on my long-term goal plan setting for sure.
You're too young to worry about that.
Renewable energy. This was a cool topic for me to learn about. There were a lot of renewable energy systems that we utilize at Stratford that I wasn't really even aware of. I know, like definitely the solar was something that I was familiar with, but the geothermal was a topic that I wasn't super familiar with. I've heard about it and other setups. I knew we had a geothermal system, but I was definitely eager to learn more about it and kind of the plans for wind in the future too.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite topics. I had a great opportunity working in Arkansas with David Orr and Will Orr, who was an engineer, and of course David Orr, he's well known for his work in environmental ecology and political realms. And so down at Middle Creek Project in Fox, Arkansas, we had actually tracking photovoltaics, and then we had passive hot water systems on the roof. I guess that's actually active because we actually moved the water into a large tank that held all this hot water and it was circulated through the floors.
Oh wow!
You ever go into a building that was heated through the slab or through the floor?
No.
It's quite heavy.
Wow, that sounds
but
great.
It's a very efficient way to heat, and because you don't really lose anything, it gets used, but that water that didn't radiate goes back in the tank, gets recharged, and on the cloudy days we would use firewood in a boiler, a large boiler, to heat that wood, and then it was just a wonderful system. And then the building was designed into the hill, so conservation of thermal loss and gain. And then we had basically it was designed to be like a one massive solar chimney, where the air circulated naturally from the cool side of the building to the warm side of the building, and you could actually feel the breeze going through the building. So I was spoiled early on. So I'm always pushing Stratford that way. And start small. Did you ever read E.F. Schumacher? Small is beautiful. It's not good, but I believe that small is beautiful. And so that's why I'm really excited about appropriate technology. And again, I want to put out a plug for an organization that actually speaks to the sort of medium scale, speaks to all scales, but it's a reminder to the large and the smaller scale that there's a sweet spot in the middle, and it varies depending on context for everyone. There's the size of tools, size of farm, size of equipment, size of enterprise, size of capital, size of barn. There's sweet spots in there that we need to always think about. And one of the reasons I love Europe so much is they haven't lost that sense of the value of space. Always renewing, regenerating, and having reverence for what was there before. So the appropriate technology thing is something I can't push enough, and the organization is ATTRA, ATTRA.org. It's appropriate technology transfer for rural areas. It's in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And it used to be for artificial wildlife. It's like a extension service for sustainable ag and appropriate technology. And just small, scalable things that we can do with renewable energy to get a lot of the work that we found done for us. Again, we need to think about those alternative scales. It's worth the investment. The solar system we have at Stratford, we originally had a 10-year ROI. Right now we're on track for an 8-year ROI, return on investment, and it's been a real money saver for us. The problem with our system, as this picture tells us, is that it's all up on the roof. It's not a problem actually because we didn't chew up in the ground, but the kids can't see it. So we're working on smaller appropriate technology scale things that are new pavilion that the kids can interact with.
For sure.
Researching the energy benefits. There are multiple energy benefits, and of course we talked about ROI, but the other thing that we need to start paying attention more to is our carbon footprint. So what are we saving by using renewable energy versus petroleum-based or fuel-based technology? And not just on pollution, but in greenhouse gases and its ability to sort of warm our planet. We have to constantly be reevaluating, what are our limits. I think we've reached them. And the weather sort of dictating that. So research those benefits. And go ahead and put a cost comparison to the different types of systems you can actually consider. And then, what works best for what you have. It's bottom line context. I don't care if it's one panel to heat a cold room, that you've got. Or one panel to heat a shed in the back. If that's what you can do, you're actually making things better than they were. By generating your own electricity. Unfortunately, the technology, we're at a crossroads where the technology makes sense not just from environmental point of view, but from an economic point of view.
For sure.
It's a win-win situation. I see the opportunity for industry in general to say, hey, it's silly for us to keep using this old technology, and we have the means right now to actually save money, actually regenerate money. By the use of renewable.
For sure. That was kind of the only thing I wanted to add to this slide was that as we continue to move forward, like gas, oil, things like that, the price is going to continue to rise because it does run out. But as we look at renewable energy, it doesn't run out. And as our technology becomes more affordable, it's going to be more affordable for us to invest in as well. And then again, you can then make money on it potentially. And then I also wanted to say, IEP put out like an email or so last week, where some people in Ohio are now eligible for like free solar panels or something. I'm sure that there's like, it's not totally free or anything, I'm sure, but there was like some deal that they're doing, I guess, for solar panels. You may be eligible. So maybe that's something you might want to look at.
There's a lot of programs out there like that. Yeah, be sure to read the fine print.
Yeah, right.
Because it basically comes down to who owns the panels.
Yeah.
And how long they own it versus turning it over to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, read the fine print.
So biochar, this was a topic I was excited to include in this. This is kind of a continuation of renewable energy. We had Claire Carey here to talk about it, a fellow student at Ohio State, where we actually got to learn about biochar from Mark Cohen from his farm in Wyatt Run Farms in Amesville with a few other people. So biochar, it sounded like, sent from God, is kind of how Mark described it. But biochar definitely has a lot of different uses. It beyond just using it in compost, using it for soil. It is easy to make in smaller, large batches. You can make it, like I said, almost every slide I've talked about, there's scalability, so you can kind of scale things the way you need them to. And biochar is something that you can do in that way as well. And kind of the main takeaway, I think, for biochar is the carbon sequestration. So if you incorporate it into the soil, it poses a great ability to increase the sequestration of the carbon from your soil, as it already does a great job of being a carbon sink, but it just boosts that a little bit more. And then again, I talk about like the water quality and nutrient leaching and soil acidity, and there's so many different benefits that are associated with biochar, and a lot of different uses beyond just soil.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of it and its benefits, but I didn't know it was so easy to make.
Yeah.
I thought it was something that had a very special process.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Did you ever get into biodynamic farming?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but it actually reminds me of some of the tenets they hold on to. The value of certain minerals and soil, and the fact that things like coal that took so long to produce, we should actually value them more than we do by burning them.
Right.
We should be thinking of other ways to utilize these things. So here we have an opportunity to actually, to me, I see it like peat moss. It's one of the more stable forms of organic matter that you can have, that nature produces.
Yeah.
And here we have something we can produce that actually adds another stable element or component to the soil environment. So,
for sure.
I'm going to think about larger scale ways that I can produce this and incorporate it more into our composting system.
Yeah, for sure. There definitely are more complicated ways to make biochar. I know that they have some like prototype systems that are set up with like several different like chambers for burning. There's almost like no smoke that comes out. Things like that you can make. You have to use like wood pellets, all these different things. But it can be easy or it can be a little bit more complicated. But it kind of depends on how you want to use it.
Well, it's the same as compost.
Right.
I mean, there's more refined ways to finish a compost where it's stable humus in compost is what you're looking for in compost and soil. So I can see stable biochar depending on how you make it.
Right.
The longer it'll last.
Yeah, for sure. So we have two more, I think. So hay. I know this was another topic that a lot of volunteers came up and said that they really enjoyed, hearing about. They didn't realize it was so complicated. But definitely hay is something that I've come to enjoy, participating in, just like the haying process, but also again the kind of perennial system that is a part of. I see the value in it. It contributes to the grass-based system that we engage in at Stratford. So it kind of really just connects a lot of dots in my mind.
It does, and it's a great bold system that will live long in the future. Of course, we're left with the challenge of how to make hay in a climate change world.
Right.
And so we talked about how we could develop some wet hay strategies for meadow hay. But it actually is almost as much a cultural thing as it is a agricultural thing.
Yeah.
Because it brings community and members and people together, families together, to get it done on a very hot day.
Yeah.
And the sense of reward through community effort is a great thing to share.
Yeah. This is kind of funny. I feel like anytime I ask my friends that are like in agriculture at school to come in hay, they're like, no way, that sounds terrible. And then my friends that have never done it before, they're like, yeah, that sounds fun,
Right.
And like, I feel like it is fun, and I like try to tell people, I'm like, it is fun, even though you've done it before, this is different, but yeah, I think that is kind of funny.
Yeah, we're carrying on here in slow pace, so
yeah, I know.
We're gonna wrap this up. The slide speaks for itself.
Right. So our last topic that we talked about that I had mentioned, I feel like kind of ties everything together. I said, hey, connects a lot of dots, but I think agroforestry is really kind of a piece that connects a lot of different things. With everything that we've talked about, a lot of it can be incorporated into like a forest type system or in combination with things like that. And it is kind of the end piece, I feel like, for a goal in agriculture. How can we better relate with nature in the forest system in an agricultural sense?
Yeah, again, it's the mimicking the nature, the perennials and nature, and how I envision agriculture as more friendly based.
Right.
And, it's an important concept that I personally do everything I can to sort of push the imagination towards more perennial production.
For sure. There's a lot of possibilities. Like we said, possibilities are endless. And, we talked about this last week, so it's not something that we need to, go over much right now. But, focusing on just, what do you think you could do? Maybe it's been done before, maybe it hasn't. But there are definitely people out there, I'm sure, that probably have. So agroforestry is a practice that has been going on for, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You look at the rainforest, I mean, that is a prime example of agroforestry, and just people even in North America, that have been here participating in agroforestry, whether they called it that or not.
Yeah, well, to me, a hunter-gatherer is also an agroforester.
Right, exactly, for sure. All right, so we have about a minute left now, so.
Yeah, fast wrap up. Did any questions come out there?
I did not. Kent posted on the live chat, are there any topics our audience would like to have us talk about? But I didn't see any. I know I was like calling people this morning. I was like, oh, comment questions, and they were like, I don't know what to ask.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
The people, as they continue to watch this
and
review them over the next however many months, feel free to contact me or you, and you can go to our website, find out ways to contact us. And if you got questions, feel free to call.
Yeah.
Or email, text, or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll try to get them answered.
Right.
We know we covered a lot of ground.
For sure.
Thanks for your efforts.
Yeah.
It's a good series. We'll see if we can get more mileage on it.
For sure, yeah. Definitely, I am very appreciative of your time, and your knowledge here. Being a great educator for not only myself, but also everyone that has been able to engage in this series.
Yeah, it's been great to have all these other people involved. Kent Larson, who's also been a great participant, so thank you, Kent.
Yeah, and everybody at Stratford that has continued to support us and engage in these videos that we're making and everything. So we're definitely grateful for all of your help. It wouldn't be possible without the viewers and the people interested. And then I'm glad that I've had all these people to support us in this project.
Oh, we should take the chance to mention our apiary fundraiser.
Oh yes, so next week we will be launching our apiary fundraiser video. So we're going to have a short video and ways to kind of get involved. We are requesting donations for $50, $250, and $500 for a variety of benefits that we can give back to you, for us to be able to help us as we continue to grow our apiary program, up to 30 hives, continue to get people involved and educated, from youth to old. We want to, get everyone involved in our apiary program, and your donations will certainly support us in that endeavor as well.
Yeah, you support the bees, then you'll also support the kids, you'll support the organization, but most importantly, you'll support the planet.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again. If you haven't yet, like our channel and subscribe if you're interested in seeing what else we have to put out there in the future. And thanks for watching this series.